So with all this continued unrest in the Middle East, humanitarian aid organizations are warning of a growing crisis coming this winter. For a look into that, we have International Rescue Committee Senior Vice President for Crisis Response, Recovery and Development, Ciarán Donnelly, joining us now. Ciarán, good to see you again. Good to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. The IRC recently released a 2025 emergency watch list. Let's talk about the situations in some of the countries you found to be at greatest risk of humanitarian emergency. And we'll start with Sudan. Briefly outline what's happening there for us.
Yeah, so our watch list covers the 20 crises that are most at risk of deterioration around the world in the coming year. 305 million people in humanitarian need globally. 80% of them live in these 20 countries. Sudan tops the list this year for the second year running. It's the largest displacement crisis in the world, with well over 10 million people displaced, mostly internally, but also millions of people have fled to neighboring countries. The country is riven by conflict between opposing forces. The economy is in free fall, and people are at risk of starvation, with pockets of famine and famine-like conditions appearing across the country.
The Palestinian territory is also high on your list, obviously, of areas of concern. What do you see ahead for the people there?
Yeah, occupied Palestinian territory is at number 2 on our list, and the situation in Gaza in particular is absolutely dire, with aid all but cut off to the northern part of Gaza for quite some time now. Very difficult conditions for aid organizations to be able to access populations in need, to be able to get in. And so people really at risk of starvation as winter sets in and living conditions become really intolerable for the 2 million people living in Gaza. And this is after more than a year of conflict, which has seen over 45,000 people killed, a huge proportion of the infrastructure destroyed, people living without access to healthcare, without access to safe water, and even as bombing and fighting continues within Gaza.
Let's take a look at Syria now. You were actually just in Lebanon, where you met with refugees from Syria's long civil war. I'm curious, what did they tell you, and what challenges do you see that lie ahead?
Yeah, Lebanon and Syria both figure in the top 10 on our watch list. And Syria obviously is at a crossroads at the moment, given the fall of the Assad regime. We're seeing reports even just today of pockets of fighting erupting across the country. So it's a moment of incredible fragility. 90% of people in Syria live in poverty. Public services and infrastructure have been destroyed by over a decade of conflict. I met with Syrian refugees in Lebanon and spoke to them about their hopes for returning home. Many of them wish to return home at some point, but right now feel like conditions are just too uncertain.
We are at a transition of power time in this country, and we're switching from one administration to the other. I'm wondering what you think about how American foreign policy will contribute or ease some of these issues around the world.
So I think from a humanitarian and development perspective, historically, a commitment to U.S. foreign assistance and engagement in humanitarian efforts has been the subject of a bipartisan consensus, and we hope to see that continue. We also know the U.S. can be a force for good in conflicts around the world and bringing about ceasefires, and we urge the incoming administration to use that influence to bring about stability, to bring about an end to fighting in places like Sudan and in places like Gaza, and to do everything in their power to ensure civilians are protected in those conflicts as well.
Ciarán Donnelly from the International Rescue Committee. Sir, thanks so much. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you.